Testing.
Mine is.
Right. I believe it is. Oh, there, it's a little taller now. All right, thank you. So moved by Supervisor Liggett, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman, I'll abstain. This is my first meeting.
Okay. One. There's no real action agenda, but the first discussion item is an update to the multi-year plan that our county administrator and our assistant administrator has put together. And with that, I'll turn that over to the county administrator to run through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This the summary page is in your packet. It's right after the agenda itself. It says page 1 at the top and the bottom. I'll get back into the bottom line numbers. The number that everybody, of course, is interested in is where it says general fund unreserved fund balance in bold down at the bottom, and you can see how that tracks out to 2025. The asterisk here is that these are just projections. There's a whole lot of assumptions that are made. Okay, a whole lot of assumptions that are made in running these numbers. So let me run through a few of those assumptions now so that you know what's behind this. Property tax, well, first of all, if you look at the 2021 column, that's all projection. We don't have the books closed yet. Treasurer's office is working hard on that. But we've projected that as best we can at this point. 2022 column, I believe, is the adopted budget. And then 23, 24, 25 are projections. So in terms of the property tax, we project a 1.75% increase. Now that's not, that's to the amount of the levy. It's not pertaining to the rate. If you recall, going into 2019 and 2020, we kept the tax rate the same. Going into 2021, we reduced it. And going into 2022, we reduced the property tax rate further. What that reflects is the increase in value around the county that allows, even as you decrease the tax rate, because the value overall increases, the levy itself goes up. And I took a look at how the percentage that the levy went up over the past 5 years, and from 2018 on to 2022, those percentages were 3%, 2.4%, 1.4%, 1.8%, and 1.5% into this year. So if you look at a 5-year average, that's a 2% increase, and a 3-year average is a 1.6% increase. So we use 1.75. Sales tax is the big piece that makes a difference, and it's also the big X factor here. The sales tax for 2021 is projected in this multi-year plan to be, let's see, almost 65 million. That's significantly higher than what was budgeted. I would have to go back and look, but I believe the budget was close to 55 million. But keep in mind, there's a distribution. Over half of that gross amount is distributed back out to the towns and the village and the city. So, and then going into 2022, as I said,
Brian,
yes.
any projected increases percentage-wise over time, or we're just pulling out a number for the sales tax?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get into what I do with the sales tax going forward. So the 2021 number is about 65 million. For 2022, I projected 61.6 million. And the methodology behind that, so we did well last year in sales tax for a number of reasons, one of which was gas prices. Comparing 2020 to 2021, about $800,000 was due to the higher gas prices. It was at $2.30 a gallon in 2020, went up to $3.04 a gallon in 2021. Obviously it's higher than that right now. We'll see where those prices go, but that was about $800,000 of what we did last year. We also benefited from online marketplace transactions, and that's revenue that's going to stay in the future. So where we were consistently doing in the 50s, mid 50s, low 50s to mid 50s over the past few years. Probably going to do closer to 60, maybe better going forward. And that's revenue we can continue to count on. Another reason we did well last year was inflation. So the main piece as to how I did the 2022 projection is I removed inflation. We'll see whether or not that actually carries forward and whether that changes this year. But when you reduce the 2021 projection to account for inflation, it goes down to about 60.5 million. And then what I did to answer Craig's question is just a 1.5% per year going forward. So adjusted the last year to account for inflation, increased it 1.5% into this year, and then each subsequent year. State aid is assumed at about 10.5%.
Brian, where am I seeing this? Where am I?
I'm giving you the assumptions that result in these numbers. So
So I have no documentation on this?
no, I'm explaining what went into
Yeah.
the calculations to get to
All
these
right,
numbers.
thank you. It's just hard for me to follow something just hearing it. I'd like to see it and have some hard copy so I can follow along and digest it.
Yeah.
And since you didn't give us something, okay,
If you got this in your drawer, you can.
I don't have that.
Okay. State aid, 10.5% of expenses, federal aid, 7 1/3% of expenses. Then we get down into salaries. In terms of our unions, CSEA has a contract, a 2.5% increase to next year. And the Alliance has a contract, 2.6% into 2023. And another 2.6% into 2024. Those are the only contracts we actually have where we know the exact amount. For the rest, we assume 2.6% per year, each of these years. Then down in paving, we assume $4 million per year in paving, which is in line with the projections that the DPW superintendent gave us in the context of doing the ban. All of the debt service for the ban is in here. So when all of that gets worked out, that's what comes down to the bottom line there, that line that says general fund unreserved fund balance. The fund balance policy that the county adopted back in 2020, I believe right before the pandemic, was 2020 through 2025. We set a minimum of 15% of the general fund expenditures. And then starting in 2025, the minimum goes up to 16.7%. And the significance of the 16.7 is that represents 2 months of operating, which is the GFOA recommended minimum fund balance. So I think if you asked the treasurer and I back in 2020 what we thought we'd be doing by the time we got to 2021, 2022, you probably could have knocked us over if you told us that we would not only achieve that 15%, but do much better than that. The percentages that those projections work out to, the 2021 percentage would be 22.5%. And percentage for this year would be 22.6, next year 22.3, the following year 22.1, and the last year 2025 20.9% of the general fund expenditure. Those are the highlights. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take a stab at it.
Yes, Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going back through the years in the past. I'm looking at 2020, the actuals on the revenue side of 138 million, and the estimated revenues was 147 for 2021. Is that $8 million? Is that strictly sales tax increase?
Yes,
Okay.
the bulk of that is going to be sales tax.
Okay, but my concern is that the projection going forward, that we are going to have deficit spending in 2024 and 25, looking at the projections. I mean, obviously they can change, but shouldn't we be doing something now to look at where some of these expenses are increasing and try to control that?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at your expense side, going into 22 to 23, we're going from 149 million to 155 million, but on the revenue side, we're only going to $155 million with a surplus of $153. That's my concern, is that, if there's going to be changes to be made in the future to not run into or have deficit spending in 24 and 25, then we need to start addressing that now.
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that, two immediate thoughts. One is hopefully the revenue projections are conservative. Hopefully we do a little better than what I projected for this year on sales tax. It looks like, inflation certainly hasn't gone away. Gas prices have continued to go up.
Right.
And then 1.5%, hopefully we do better than that going year to year. On the expense side, one thing that'll go away is the ban. The ban is going to be, I believe, a 5-year payback, and the value of the ban. So the ban, the expense associated with the ban starts in 2023, and it's about $1.7 million per year for 5 years. So that's 23 through 27. So in 2028, that'll fall off. So that'll be another $1.7 million that frees up.
But it's nice to see the unreserved fund balance increasing on an annual basis.
It is.
It's a pretty healthy fund balance.
Yeah, I think we made some good decisions during 2020, both on the expense side and in what we did working with the private sector to try to get people to come here. We've had a successful summer, as everybody knows. So we certainly did much better in that year than anybody thought we would.
Yeah, because you look at the actuals in 2019 on the expense side and the actuals in 2020, $7 million less on
Yeah.
the expense side.
And if you look down at the line that says surplus or deficit in all major funds, it's the line directly above the general fund unreserved fund balance. 2019, it was a $500,000, $434,000 deficit, and it jumped up to a $4.5 million surplus in 2020.
Yeah, Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you. Under general fund expenditures by object, was that 2-point-something% for salaries and
2.6.
2.6? And then for contractuals and equipment, any increases were you projecting?
Equipment and contractuals, 2% per year.
2%.
And we set fringe at 49% of salaries.
And debt service is the total county debt service.
That's right. There is one piece of debt service that is budgeted elsewhere. Rob Lynch reminded me where that was, but I can't recall at this point. It's a smaller piece, but
There is some debt service that's going to be coming on.
right.
Yeah.
And that would be recorded in here already.
That's right. Yeah, that's all part of these numbers.
For 2022, we budgeted in sales tax $56,621,485.
This is, we do this the beginning of the year, end of the year for the rating agencies when they go back and evaluate our bond rating. Take the treasurer's, that's something.
Yes.
I just, to Supervisor Diamond's point, that's the whole purpose of this plan, is to just say, look, this is where the projections are. We need to make sure we're addressing it now, not after it's happened.
Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, and if I can follow up on Supervisor Diamond's questions there as well. So as we sit here day to day on committee meetings and we're going through with new hires, let's say, or any other purchases and whatnot, is there any way that we can kind of gauge on how we're doing towards these projections, where it would throw us off? And numbers.
Yeah, sure. Look at it in this respect. If it's a one-time expense of $100,000, you take every projected amount that's in that general fund unreserved fund balance for each year, and you just drop each year by 100,000. If it's a recurring expense, if you're adding a position that's going to cost 100 with the salaries and the fringe, you got to reduce the 2022 amount by 100. You reduce the 2023 amount by 200, the 2024 by 300, and the 2025 by 400. So that's the difference.
Okay.
Yes.
And then also, Mr. Chairman, on the 2020 actual on debt service revenues, there was 19 million. That was and expenditures, 19 million. Up from 4 million, and now we're back down onto a 3 to 5 million. What was that bump?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch where you were.
Yeah, down debt service
Debt service?
for 2020.
2020.
There's a whole bump in the snake here.
Yeah, we went up by 15 million.
The big bump.
That's a good question. Let me get an answer to that, and I'll get it back to the committee. Do you know off the top of your head, Mike?
Yeah.
Could be.
And those are actuals from 2020.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Kind of a big number to forget.
I'll get an answer to that.
There's no pages left.
I do have.
Yeah, because the expense side has jumped up similar to the revenue side.
Right.
There was a payment to our escrow account for $15.7 million recorded in 2020.
Oh, that was the refinance on the building across.
Where we got the lower rate.
Yes. Yeah, that, for the human resources, book, that was the refinance.
Thanks.
So we had to show it as revenue, and that's, because we brought in that one, had to pay it off, and pay off that.
Right.
Any other questions?
Well, I'll say, with that, I'll say thank you. And again, this is a good tool to look forward and keep an eye on the amount of money that we are spending and committing to be spent. So thank you very much for your work.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you to Tammy for all the work she puts into this too.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is referrals. And this is a referral from the February 3rd, 2022 Personnel Administration and Higher Education Committee pertaining to salary adjustments for 2022. And I believe in the back here is the what was done in the 2022 budget.
I should have brought a better pair of glasses.
I just, what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we get this printed?
I thought we had a good process, probably one of the better processes I've seen as budget officer since I've been budget officer. there was a group of us that did evaluations of department heads, and the department heads did evaluations of their employees and their departments, made recommendations to us, and I believe we followed their recommendations. And we debated over the raises for the department heads amongst the group that was assembled, and I thought we come to a good conclusion, but I'm hearing different, so that's why it's on the agenda. And the discussion was mainly about bumping everyone to their top year. If you look there, more to the right from the center right, you'll see entry first, second, up to 30th. That's the number of years that a person's been employed here. And then it's calculated out by a percentage to get these numbers. And that was part of the merit part of the evaluation. If we felt that the employee deserved, merited it, we may go all the way to their top year, or may not, and that was the debate. So yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. Will we be going into executive session to discuss some of these?
Yeah. If we're going to talk about individuals, yes, we should.
Supervisor Thomas, it's Andrea Hogan.
Yes, Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks for recognizing me. I'm struggling with really bad Wi-Fi, but my question to you in personnel was, what is the process outside of the budget process for reviewing employees' salaries?
I guess that process would probably go through the committee that the employee operates through, I would think. Yes, Mr.
We recently had one with the treasurer's office. We had two positions that the union consented to remove, so we had to come up with how those positions were graded on this scale. And the process that was followed was the treasurer took a look at the job duties, made a recommendation. We turn that over to HR and civil service. They take a look at it. They compare the job duties to other positions and how those positions are graded. They give their feedback, and then we discussed it, I believe, through the personnel committee, or did we do it through? We did it through personnel and finance, right?
May I have a follow-up?
Yes.
Thank you. So is that process followed for every single employee of the county?
As far as I know.
The union employees would yes, every time a grade is changed, even if it's a union employee, you can change a union employee's grade through reallocation. We haven't done that in a couple of years, but that will come through the Board of Supervisors. And so if there's a title change that is a result of job duties not being in line, that title change would of course come through the board. So every time I can't think of an exception to that where if a grade is changed, it doesn't come through the Board of Supervisors when you're not and even in the context of the budget, it does, of course, because the board approves the budget.
One more follow-up, please.
Yes.
So every salary change we've approved since the 1st of January has gone through this process?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm not a member of this committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. So I have two quick questions. One being then the recommended practice or the recommended request here for any type of salary change would be a committee discussion, approval, recommendation to the personnel committee, then a recommendation to the finance committee, then to the full board to the extent possible.
Correct.
Not including the budget committee.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
what the budget committee would, the budget deals with it one time a year, you know. once.
Okay. And then my follow-up to that is that I think there's some confusion around this chart. Last year, there was a lot of discussion about, well, we had to look at increases for particular employees because the chart says they should be at this year, at this level, at whatever step. And that opened up, I think, a big discussion from many department heads and many members of the community of, if you do it for one, should you do it for all? Should you be evaluating if there's any discrepancies anywhere? And I agree. I think that the process has come a long ways over the last decade in terms of trying to evaluate employees on both merit and longevity. I remember the days we didn't have anything regarding performance or merit. So I think this is a good process, but I want to confirm this chart is just a guiding document. It has never been approved by the board, is not passed by resolution, and it certainly can be deviated from within those budget discussions because it's not a past it's not an official document of the board.
Maybe not this chart, but the attorney chart, because that's what started all of this was the attorneys in the DA's office and getting their salaries up. That did go through the board, if I recollect correctly, but I'll refer to the administrator.
Yeah, the answer to the question is yes, it's advisory. It's meant to, prior to having these charts, what would happen is you would come into the budget process, and if a department head, I don't want to say worked up the courage because that doesn't convey the right message, but if a department head made a request to increase their non-union employee, they would say, can I have another $5,000 or another $3,000 or whatever? And then the budget officer would have to make a determination on that. And it felt a little arbitrary. So what we were trying to do is put some science behind it, but it is advisory. It's advisory. And you know, the answer on the merit, I believe that was the first part of Rachel's, the point that she was making. The notion of, if somebody has been here for 25 years and they're a union employee, they're going to get that 25-year increment. That's automatic. And when we discussed how to handle the non-union employees back in 2019, the personnel committee and the supervisors who were there, who weighed in on it, didn't necessarily feel that it should be automatic for the non-union. They wanted an element of merit in there. So that's why we said, if you're on this chart, and you've been here for 25 years, the salaries are listed all the way out to show how long each individual has been here, but you don't automatically get that. There's a merit evaluation in there, and there's a determination that's made.
Go ahead.
So to be clear, these are not passed by resolution by the board.
No.
And may I? My last point on this is that, you know, other counties, the state and the federal government has found a way with non-union employees to take into account both merit and longevity and to still have some automatic step increases as well as looking at additional bumps based on merit. I do think there's some tweaks that could still be made in this. I brought this up last year. I'll continue to bring it up this year. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting it on the agenda, having a budget meeting early on. And I hope that there are discussions about how we can make this chart even more effective so that there is some equity. There's about, and I don't know if you've gone over the numbers in terms of what the whole number is here that we're looking at, but I mean, every tax dollar is significant, but in the picture of our employees and what we pay in the department heads, I do think there's some flexibility there to take a look at those where there is a little bit of a discrepancy. And if the proper procedure moving forward for every single employee will be to go through committee, then to personnel, then to finance without exception, I think in those committees, those committee chairs can certainly start that process. I know a couple already have, which is why it's here before you today.
Yep.
So I look forward to continuing to tweak an advisory chart but is not an official board document.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To increase everybody to their highest year of employment, it would cost 334,000 approximately. Yes, Supervisor Liggett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just lost that thought. Having this come before each appropriate committee and then funnel up through to personnel and then finance could be a little chaotic. I'm wondering if it is something that personnel should just look across the board into all departments. Because if you have, let's look at our agendas here. Criminal justice, public safety, because things started here with attorneys. Let's look at that. They come in and that committee puts them forward their recommendations on things. And then public health comes in through their committee and there's recommendations on salaries there. And then all of a sudden, these disparate parts come up to personnel. Being judged in different arenas, you may still have achieved parity between all employees that are on this chart here. Does that make sense at all? How it could be confusing?
I think so. Yeah, because I think it all, it all comes to personnel and then the finance. Anyhow. I think that individual committee should weigh in on, a raise after the budget is passed. I think that would be appropriate. Yes, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chairman. I think the appropriate path is exactly what's been laid out here, which is the department head goes to their committee. That committee then makes the determination whether an additional merit increase is warranted up and above the budgeted amount and so forth. Now, it may seem tedious, it may seem long, but I think it's the proper protocol and proper process. And then it goes to finance. If it's approved, if there's a change, then personnel takes it to finance. And then finance, if they deem it appropriate, then they take it to the full board, and then the full board finally votes on it. But is it tedious? Probably, but it's the right tedious. It's the right set of numerous different eyes upon the issue, because it's a major change. And when we say, if everyone was changed this year, I think you said, Mr. Chairman, it's 330,000. That's 330,000 in 1 year. And then you start compounding that over 10 years, plus the annual increases and so forth, you're looking closer to $4 million in 10 years. That's significant, just in additional dollars. In additional dollars. I used to do that on the school board for Queensbury. There's one thing. Well, it's only $10,000, Mr. Beatty. Well, no, it's not only $10,000. The average teacher is there 25 years, blah, blah, blah. That's an additional 250,000 plus a 3% every year. It was over 350,000 up and above. And that's how we have to look at things.
Yeah.
Personally, that's how I think we should look at things.
When the expenses are reoccurring, which salaries are.
Exactly. Thank you. And that's what I'm saying. They're reoccurring plus the increase on top of that.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying. So that's why I like that it goes through the proper process, and a lot of set of eyes, a lot of committees are involved, because it's a bigger deal than I think most people realize. That's all I'm saying.
You had a
Oh, yeah, I was just going to essentially put an exclamation point on that. And it gets back to Craig's question earlier when we were talking about the multi-year. If it costs $300,000 to do something this year, the impact on next year is 600. 2 years out is 900 plus whatever salary increase they're going to get. So it does have an impact.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. Can you just explain to me the budget increments? I'm looking at those different numbers and they vary. What does that mean?
Budget increments.
Right next to position and grade.
That was, if you look at what their salary was in the 2021 compensation schedule, that's the increment that corresponds to that salary. So I won't say the name, but if you go down to the very first one that doesn't say BOS, BOS stands for Board of Supervisors. Yeah, if you go down to the very first one after the BOS, that individual's salary in 2021, the position was a grade 14, and the salary was the 15th increment on grade 14.
All right, because I just happened to be looking through this and, and I noticed, some big jumps, especially two people that started at the same year was bumped to a 20. And well, that was a bump to a 5. All right, I'm off on that, but I just didn't understand what those, all right, but those are the budget is the grade then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the first column there is the grade, the second column is the increment. So that's what it was for 2021. And then in the 2022 budget, you can track it back through all those columns that say entry through 30th. So you can see,
Right.
You can see what it is there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think this conversation creates a wonderful opportunity for us to communicate with each other, maybe on a increased level as far as discussions about these types of matters. As an example, if county facilities was looking to change salaries for any individual employees. There's 4 members of the County Facilities Committee in this room right now. I don't profess to know as much about the daily operations of county facilities as those members do. If I needed to vote on a salary increase or changes, I would want to speak to each of those individuals before casting my vote. And again, I think it creates an opportunity for us to begin or re-begin to communicate with each other outside of the office also, outside of this meeting room. So just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one final thought. I assume that when we do discuss individuals, they will each and every time be taken into executive session. Let me explain why. Number one is I think they're due that, and individuals do that respect, not to have it publicly aired. But number two is there's an enormous amount of pressure to always say yes. It's easy to say yes in life. Okay, yeah, go along with it. Yes, 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 yes. And we are dealing with OPM, other people's money, which is the taxpayers' money. So when a department head comes forward and says, "Hey, I'd like another $5,000 for your Bobby Sue," when you do it in the public forum, it's much more difficult to say no, and it's a lot easier to say yes, because of that pressure. And that's why I respect the fact that, number one, is I want to respect each employee's integrity by doing it in executive session. And number two, I think we can be a little more frank and honest and open without the same pressures henceforth. So I'm glad to hear that they will be in executive session each and every time someone does come to a committee and wants to discuss an increase, because I think the employees do that respect, and I think we'll have a more frank discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I made that mistake at a board meeting, and I regret doing that. So.
We all make mistakes.
Yes, Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you. What can we title this chart? Is that
I title it non-union or management confidential salaries.
And this is applicable for
2022, right? This is a manual process. The payroll system will automatically calculate anybody who gets an automatic increment. But because they're not automatic, this is something I do manually. This is actually my worksheet that Jackie starts it. I prepare it in the summer, and then we work off of this when we do the budget. And I did go back to Supervisor Hogan's question earlier, and I checked the salary adjustments that we've done this calendar year. And it's only 3 positions. It's the 2 I mentioned from the treasurer, and the other one in emergency services, which was, it was an oversight in the budget where we just didn't put the right number in, so we fixed it.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Mr. Lehman, do we have any questions or comments from the public?
Right up there.
Oh,
So I'd assume no.
probably not. Okay. Privilege of the floor. I think everybody's had an opportunity. Motion to adjourn.
Well, I thought we were going in executive session to talk about.
Oh, you want to talk about, okay, we can, yeah.
Well, I wanted to open up the dialogue. Now that we have a process in the way we're gonna do it, but I wanted to open up the dialogue from things I was working on last year.
Okay. Anybody on the committee want to
No, I can't yet.
entertain that?
Yeah.
Supervisor Diamond on the motion. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Did you second?
Yeah, could we be clear on why we're going into executive session?
To discuss some performance of employees, I think necessarily it would be that, because we're talking about merit increments.
Okay, okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. We had discussions in executive session. No action was taken, and no action is necessary at this point. Privilege of the floor, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 quick questions or confirmations from you as chairman or your budget committee. Again, I recognize I'm not on this committee, but would appreciate this consensus. Based on the discussions that we've had today surrounding what initially led us to a referral to meet regarding the salary chart, could it be the consensus, or would the committee please consider the fact that now that the procedure will be, when looking at requests for pay increases for those that fall within this chart, that it will go to committee and then to personnel and finance and eventually to the full board. Can that request be made from a single supervisor? Meaning, I know there's other items that try to get onto an agenda, and perhaps the chair, for whatever reason of that committee, may feel differently. I'd hate to see this be one of those situations where a particular member says, you know, I really want to look at the salary of this particular individual, or the department head comes and it's not able to go onto the agenda and have that process. Much like in committees where we can make a motion and that can be moved by a single member of the committee without a second, I assume that would be the same way any supervisor could bring it up in the appropriate committee.
I would think so. I would think if they're not on the committee, obviously that might be a problem,
but they would be afforded the opportunity to weigh in if they were not a member of that committee regarding that issue. Perhaps it's a supervisor works closely with a department head and they don't sit on that committee.
usually, yeah. I mean, most chairs allow that.
Well, I've been seeing inconsistencies in when committee members are permitted or not permitted to talk in committee and weigh in. So I just want to make sure any member of the board can bring it to the appropriate committee for consideration.
My answer would be yes.
Okay. It seems fair to me and transparent. I just, on the record, wanted to make sure we had that dialogue since we're identifying process. Supervisor from Glens Falls' point earlier, is there a way to then notify the department heads on what this new process and policy will be so that they are informed of where that access is regarding salary increases? I know in the past, it's always been something you just kind of wait for budget or you have that dialogue offline, but I think in the interest of wanting to, really hear concerns and address them, it would be nice for our department heads to know that this process, which I applaud once again, this committee for coming to a process for us to address this, that they be notified.
Yeah, I would think we could draft something up that would address that.
Great, thank you. My last one is just simply that I would like to offer to help. I recognize I'm not a member here, but I would like to work with the budget officer, the chairman of the board, and the county administrator as it relates to tweaking this chart that once again isn't approved by the full board or any type of legislation, but is merely an recommendation or a guide throughout the budget process. I alluded earlier to the fact that there are other models out there that do have automatic step increases, which also take into account the performance of a particular individual on their performance evaluation. And the goal all along here was to try to do performance-based increases, taking into account that longevity. And while this is certainly a great start, there are tweaks that could be made to it. And I know last year I had several discussions with our county administrator about some best practices that I've seen throughout the state and the country as it relates to performance evaluations tied into these salaries. And I was hopeful that would be something that this year, I think budget would be the appropriate place if changes would be made to this chart for that to come.
Yep.
Since it is a budget document that you use. And I was wondering if we could keep that as a discussion item so that we could work on that throughout the year.
Sure, I'd be happy to take a look at other models. Sure, the administrator would too. Probably has.
Wait,
I am always open to improvements in process.
well, I know we brought this up last year and we've been talking about it, but I would, if it could just stay as a discussion item, I think then it ensures that if we're going to remove it, your committee would have to remove it. And I think you'd need a consensus of your committee to leave it on and create it as a discussion item. And I think the chairman of the board agrees that there is a way that we could look at this a little differently. And I'd be happy to the extent my help would be accepted to work on that with him.
Sure. What's the cause the committee feel they want to leave this as a discussion item?
Sure.
Personnel, I'm sorry, is that what we're talking?
Budget.
No, sir.
The whole process, discussion process?
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I again, if it could be left on a budget discussion item, only because this is where this chart is mostly utilized is through the budget process, not necessarily the performance evaluation, which is a different guiding document.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Anybody have an objection?
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Anyone else? Motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Moved by Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Diamond. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.